So I would invite at this time, they've got their own agenda for their part of this. So do you all have this?
Yes.
I would invite, and I'll forget your name, I'm sorry.
Mary Tovar.
Mary Doe, yeah. And
Mary
she is
what?
our PDMG.
Tovar.
Oh, DOVAR?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
She is our PDMG for this, disaster, so she'll be working hand in hand with, well, with all three of us, especially and you all. So, I invite her up to open her part of this up.
Thank you much. Can we just, get the rest of the folks that weren't able to be here physically opening up the meeting? Let's see here. We like to say that we're flexible. We're gonna test that today. Alrighty, so, I'm your program delivery manager. I'm gonna be your primary point of contact with FEMA. The young lady that was with me, that's my supervisor. She had to step out for a call real quick. She's my supervisor. She's the program delivery task force lead, also known as PDTFL. But you're mostly gonna be dealing with me. You're gonna see the term quite often, because that's who I am. I'm a primary point of contact. If there's any need for site inspections, I coordinate those. If there's any need to talk to EHP or environmental and historical preservation people, I coordinate that. Whoever else you need to talk to, I get to coordinate all that stuff for you. But I know you guys are busy people, so let's get straight to the agenda. There is a lot of information on here, because it's, even though I've already seen your damage inventory list, that can grow. You've got 2 months from this day to add to that. If you find additional damage, or if you find that you're fixing something and something breaks while you're fixing something else, that's the kind of thing that you would wanna talk to me about. So let me go ahead and, is there a camera that we can add for this meeting?
Right back there.
Is it being recorded?
Yes.
Okay.
It is. Oh, no, it's off. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
it's off? Okay. So
I'm recording.
You're recording?
Mhm.
Awesome. Can we
Yeah.
get a copy of that
Mhm.
after? I appreciate you for that. Okay, I'm safe. I'm safe. Thank you. They like to keep us safe. So thank you for your patience, but what we're gonna be looking at is just simply the period between May 19th and May 28th. And the declaration date for this one was June 14th. And any damages that you report to us must be the result of the incident during that period. So anything before might be sometimes staging. You might sometimes be staging stuff that will fall both before those dates, and we can look at those. Let me see, so we are looking, let me go ahead and bring up our agenda. There we go. So folks can follow us along. Close this up. And I put those dates at the very top because they're very important to due dates. So for this disaster, the federal share for any emergency work and permanent work is 75%. We obligate at 75% of whatever you're asking for. And for the management costs, that is at 100% for that Cat Z project that you're gonna be hearing a lot about. These meetings, these are costing you money. You put that on a spreadsheet, said we were at a meeting, we look at reimbursement for that under the Cat Z project. To have a project, it has to meet the minimum threshold of 3,900, and it starts to look like a large project at 1,037,000. Those are important numbers because sometimes insurance reductions will bring you below that amount. So when you have costs that are a little low, talk to us. If you do find something new, I like I said, I did see your damage inventory, and it looked pretty good. It looks like we've got valid projects once we start looking at documentation. And then then we can start looking at eligibility, but at the very least, meet that minimum threshold. So remember those dates that I told you about? Your time limits. From today, you've got 60 days to identify the rest of your damage inventory. At day 61, you have to have a really good reason why you didn't tell us about it before. For debris, a lot of folks are still working on debris. You've got 6 months, 180 days from the start of the incident. That's why it's the first date that I give you. Any emergency protective measures, 6 months. Debris, barricades, EOC, your Emergency Operations Center, anything along those lines, sheltering has to be done within 6 months. You can get extensions through the state. You have to have pretty good extenuating circumstances. Now your permanent work, you got 18 months to complete that work. That's a little bit longer. You got time, you can. Extensions are available through the state. You have to request it, you have to have a good reason, pretty much the only time that cannot be extended is that 60 days to identify your damages. Alright, any questions so far? We got a pretty big crowd today. Alright. For general eligibility, without looking at documentation, you have to have the three big ones: an eligible facility, eligible work, and eligible cost. So the facility, it has to be yours in the designated area and in use at the time of the disaster. So if you've got an abandoned storage unit 2 miles out of town, or 2 miles out of your county, it's not within the designated area, it's not in active use, no longer an eligible facility. So little things to look at, but like I said, you've given me a DI, a damage inventory. I didn't see any problems with that. The work has to be eligible as a result of the incident. So let's say emergency work. If you're doing payroll, that's not emergency work. If you're doing regular maintenance, that's not emergency work. Things like that. But for the most part, barricades, traffic control that I saw on the DI list, I didn't see anything that raised any flags. Once we start seeing documentation, I'll be able to give you a better review of that. Okay? And eligible costs. This comes into play when we're looking at things like contracts. The time and materials contracts, those are the ones that are pretty high value. We tend to accept those, but with a very limited amount of time, so we wanna make sure that they're not charging you double because they know that FEMA's in town. So that's where eligible costs come into play. Alright, cause even though you've already given me a damage inventory list, if that gets added to it, we wanna make sure that you keep all that in mind if you do need to build more. Alright, and speaking of that damage inventory, we cannot start without that list, and it sounds like off that list, we could probably leave with a project to the CRC today. Just depends on how much documentation you have. So you guys are already pretty far ahead of the game. We don't need all of the information up front for FEMA. All the validation stuff is happening at the state now, so if you give me a spreadsheet, or in this case, I think invoices, I can pop it on a spreadsheet. We don't even need to see the contract. Any validation happens at the state. We just need to know how much do you want and based on what. Photos and GPS as well, but it's pretty much simplified. The simplified measures now means how much do you want, what are you basing that on? And let's see what we can do to get that money moving. Alright, and this process is document intensive at the closeout and at the reimbursement. The state side and the closeout post obligation, it gets document intensive. But for me, to get your projects moving, don't need a lot of documentation. Alright, and it did include all the categories of work. You guys already have a good damage inventory. I'm not gonna go through all of these specifically because somebody clearly already knows all of these, and you can always come back and look at these. Essentially what you need to know: emergency work, are you lessening a threat to property or people or property in that order? And for the emergency work, are you restoring your facility? That's basically it, because a lot of times, even though we have these, the category D, the water control facilities, and the F get confused a lot. Yes, sir?
So, are you gonna cover resiliency anywhere in this?
Yes.
We'll go back.
Because like I mentioned, for permanent work, we're restoring back to pre-disaster design function capacity, but we do have other options, starting with mitigation. So mitigation, we start looking into codes and standards first. So if this place falls, it looks pretty new to me, but if there's a new code and standard that you need to build with a different door, we look at the codes and standards first. And if you don't have that option, codes and standards still don't meet your standards, we can talk to mitigation. So we have two types of mitigation. We have the 404 mitigation, that's the statewide one, and 406 mitigation, that's project specific. So it would be specific to the theoretical damage to this building. So I do believe we have online our mitigation person. Okay. Yvonne. Can you tell us a little bit more about hazard mitigation, please? Yvonne, you're on mute. Let's make sure I'm not on mute. Nope, I've been talking.
We're on mute up here.
Okay. That's fine, the mic comes through on this one here, so we're good. Okay, well,
Can you take her off?
let me see, I can't take her off, I can mute her, but I can't take her off mute. So just a little bit of what I know of mitigation, if you do find that you do want to mitigate some of your buildings, there are limits, it can go from 15 or 100%. Those types of details, if you give us a mitigation proposal, we would have mitigation look that over, and they would tell you, this is reasonable, this is feasible, this is a better, well, we can't tell you what to do. So if you say, I wanna mitigate it with the worst materials, we probably won't do something like that because we know that it's just gonna break. But if we say, hey, you might wanna consider this other material, we might tell you that. But if you decide this is the material we want, that's the material we're gonna cost, cause it is your recovery. We're here to help you through your recovery and to get you guys back to helping out your constituents. Okay, alright, but bigger numbers come through the Inflation Reduction Act. We have the low carbon materials, so again, with our theoretical damage to the building, if you wanna build back with materials that have substantially lower levels of, in them, greenhouse gases, we would look into those costs. So those aren't code standards, those aren't a mitigation, you're just building back with, instead of gravel, you're building back with asphalt. But we would need not a report, a study that says this material is significantly lower in greenhouse gases, so it would save by a specific amount. And I believe I included that in there, but if you want, I'm more than happy after the meeting to send you a little bit more information on something like that, because some folks are trying to build back more resilient and for something that is better on the environment. And that's what the Inflation Reduction Act is giving us. But it's also giving us net zero energy products. So those, again, the theoretical damage to this building, you put up enough wind turbines or enough solar panels that your electric bill here essentially goes to zero, we can start considering a net zero project. And those are the not building back to the pre-disaster design. Anybody have any questions on mitigation or the Inflation Reduction Act? Alrighty. Oh, okay. So additional types of projects, these are not common, but we do still want to mention them, that are not building back the theoretical damage to this building. You can do an alternate project that says, hey, our community would be better served without this building, we're gonna build something else completely. That does get capped, it's not a common thing, but still an option. If you have something that went down completely and you wanna do something completely different with it, let us know. Also an improved project, let's say your fire department needs to be rebuilt, it had 2 bays, you wanna build it back with 3 bays, that's an improved project. All these projects get capped at the, and this policy does kind of fluctuate, is still being kind of looked at, but it is capped at whatever the repair to pre-disaster would have been, we cap it at that amount. So we have the 428 projects, that's probably not gonna apply to you, that's all your permanent repair projects. All those funds from all the different repairs go into one big pot and you can use them as you need to repair amongst everything else. It's been a minute since I've seen one of those. Now the 50% rule, that is a more common one, that let's say this building got so totaled, we can see it's gonna cost too much to rebuild it, we go with the 50% rule and go with a complete rebuild. So, and we do have expedited large projects, but I didn't see anything that said large to me with your guys, what I've been given so far. We're basically hand walking those through all the queues, so, and that's on the large.
I do have a question, mitigation, would that, like, we lost the generator in the jail during, we were out of power for so long. Would we do that on mitigation, or would they, how would we try to recapture that?
Well, the generator on the jail, just put it on as your damage. Do you plan, so I saw generators already, that there were 6 of them that have already been repaired or replaced. Give us the invoice, as long as you're putting it back the same.
Would that be on mitigation?
No,
Okay,
it's
just the replacement cost.
it's your equipment that was destroyed, and you're fixing it, so to speak.
So to that point, Dan, there was, because the generator only runs on one fuel source, which was natural gas, and then with all the natural gas damage, natural gas was shut off. So there's technology out there to be a biofuel and have it run on natural gas or diesel, so regardless of the disaster, it would be able to, and in the jail situation, you got to have power there. So would that be part of the mitigation or resiliency to? Okay.
Any improvement, if you're not going back to exactly the way it was before, let us know what your plans are, and we'll see if we're gonna
So
go with
that would be a
mitigation.
mitigation.
It's that one would be.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, anything that's not back to pre-disaster, we're looking at mitigation, or if there's a new code that says you have to have this backup thing, we would go into code.
They do theirs, yeah.
Yeah, just let us know what you're basing your plan for improvement on, and we'll find which direction it is,
Okay.
because we don't want the jails to be,
No, they're not real happy when that happens.
yeah, yeah.
Lights and air
Yeah.
conditioning.
Yeah, we don't want anybody that's already stressed to be any more of a bother during
Not
something
when
like
it's in the
this.
nineties.
Yeah. Alright, so let's talk about those management costs. We did mention earlier that, just date, time, what you were up to. I do know that the state had also requested timesheets for those, management costs, that you're, the category Z project. We're gonna wanna make sure that we were able to, we, FEMA in the field, we run that, as an estimate, because even well after we're gone, there's still closeout activity, you're still pulling documentation, we're long gone, you're still helping out the state, so there's still time that's management costs. So we always run it as an estimated of 5% of all your obligated projects. So you have that pot of money that you can keep pulling from if you give them the documentation that say, we have 5 people at a closeout meeting, give us money for that. I do know that the state, and I'll let her make sure. You wanted timesheets and other stuff, is you're gonna be the one that, your team is gonna be the one that validates that, if I remember
We'll
correctly.
need, time sheets, proof of payment, yeah. And we just need to be able to basically prove that the work that you're claiming was related to the disaster. And like she said, it can be your attending meetings, all of the different conference calls that you can be involved in. If our office comes up to sit down with you guys and discuss it, that counts. It doesn't necessarily have to be with FEMA. If RPA staff or I come up to discuss it, then you know we can include that. So just make sure that you can describe what it was, what type of meeting, and that type of stuff.
And all the documentation that accompanies that, such as payroll policy, anything else, so we've already got that in, it's
Yeah.
already in.
And those meetings don't have to be like Scotty or Steve. It can be if we come up and talk to your district secretaries, if we come up and meet with you commissioners, anybody that touches this disaster, management wise for grants management can be included in that 5%.
So not just public things. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Awesome. Alrighty. So I covered this a little bit earlier, permanent work versus emergency work. If you restore it, it's permanent. If you address an immediate threat, it's emergency. What happens sometimes on road work is that they'll do a patchwork on the road, come by later and it turns out, oh, well this is good, we don't need to do anything else. We can change from an emergency work patchwork to a permanent work project. That's pretty easy, because it does happen quite often with road work. Alright? Common types of costs. It's usually labor, equipment, material, contract, sometimes some rentals. So for labor, we wanna make sure to include fringe rates in your spreadsheets, not just base pay. We wanna make sure that you're including everything that we can possibly find to get you back to normal. Alright, fringe benefits, I put a couple extra little lines in there. They do tend to be different for straight time and overtime, but just make sure to include that in your labor spreadsheets, and we should be fine. So for debris work, both regular and overtime are eligible. For anybody that's temporary, it's essentially anybody not budgeted. And what comes up a lot is standby time. Standby time may be eligible for pre-positioning, like I mentioned earlier, it might fall outside of that start of the incident period. We do see standby quite a bit, so it's not anything out of the ordinary. For your emergency work, your category B, that's your EOCs, your barricades, your sandbagging, anybody that's non-budgeted. If you have to hire backfill employees to come in and do the work, they're straight time and they're overtime, because they're not part of your normal budget. So your part-time people, that normally work 20 hours, they work for 30 hours, that extra 10 hours of straight time becomes eligible. If they're doing eligible work on an eligible facility. Once we see documentation, we can give you a more accurate answer, but this is generally what you wanna look at, okay? So, anybody that's budgeted, these folks in the green shirts, it seems like they've got their regular budget. Only anything that they worked outside of their regular budget we would be able to consider eligible, but for anybody working on the spreadsheets, if you have somebody that's working straight time, that also used equipment, include the straight time for $0 so that we can validate their equipment use. So sometimes it is important to include your spreadsheets to have information that's gonna be $0 because it might connect to the activity that they were doing overall. Alright? And permanent work, pretty much all things go. Your straight time, your overtime, so backfill, that one's a lot easier to track. And the equipment rates, so if you are using your trucks or your own sandbaggers, if you wanna put in for the generator use time under your category B stuff, our rates are from July of 2023, they typically include, operation, insurance, depreciation, maintenance, so if you're gonna be wanting fuel reimbursement, you wouldn't be able to use our rates because it does include fuel and stuff like that. The eggheads out there somewhere get together and say, this is how much this item is, like, all the same people that say cost per mile, that's the same folks that do our rates, and I don't think I've ever gotten anybody that complains about how much the cost per hour is, cause it's pretty generous from what I hear. Alright? So materials. This is where it gets a little questionable, like folks pull from their stock, so you still use that, that's still gonna cost you money, you still have to reimburse that. So if you have an obscure pump that's been sitting in storage that you had to pull out, you still need to replace that. So as long as we can put a value to that, you can show us that you pulled it out of stock, put a value to it, we can put it on the spreadsheet and ask for reimbursement. Okay, other than that, receipts, invoices for validation, which will be a lot more important for the state side. Again, for myself, our simplified, we just wanna know how much on a spreadsheet if you've got it. If you got documentation, I'll take it, I'll do a validation, like a 20%, and send it forward to the CRC, because I don't wanna be the one that slows down that obligation. Okay. Alright, and our documentation for completed work. So, you already provided the FEMA will always need, except for the photos and the GPS. Any damage, let us see it broken, and let us know where it broke. Those are very important to us. So the items past that point, some of the things that they can wait until the state is doing the validation or we're doing closeout, timesheets, usage logs for equipments, sometimes the timesheets will have the usage logs, then it's just one document, don't worry yourself about making two. So any equipment information, and this information will actually be good on the spreadsheet, make, model, capacity, and who was driving it if it was a truck. Generators don't generally have an operator. Any invoices, any receipts, and if you have your own spreadsheets, great. You just kinda need to know how you filled those in. So what data did you use to get those entries? So, and we do not accept lump sum invoices at any point, cause we can't say cost per unit, we can't see how much it was per unit, we can't accept that invoice. And again, you don't have to provide it to me. This is just to get you, once I'm gone, I wanna make sure that you're not just kind of confused. The state's gonna be able to walk you through it, but if you have it at the front of your mind from the beginning, it'll be a lot easier for you on the back end. And I did attach in the email the document checklist for that, it's pretty much everything that I could think of. It's been pretty comprehensive, I've been using it for 8 years, nobody's ever had a problem with it, if they provide as much as they can from there. You don't have to provide any of that information to me, but it will be very helpful to you in the closeout and post-obligation process. Alright, so we've gone through quite a bit of info. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? Coffee? Alright. So generally, the steps are, we figure out the damages, which you guys have already done. Then we in the field, this is your field thing, your PDMG, your TFL. We've got an EHP rep that's gonna come up to tell us a little bit more about EHP in a second, our mitigation crew. There's a whole team that is Team Rogers County. So if there's a question that I can't answer, I'll find it. because thankfully I don't know everything yet, because that would be very boring. Yes, sir.
Are you also the team for the City of Claremore?
We don't generally discuss other applicants with anybody else. So if they tell you who their PDMG is, I guess we would be able to confirm that, but I don't generally discuss other applicants with
Okay,
anybody.
because there's gonna be some crossing there, there's gonna be some paperwork that basically butts up in some projects that were kind of team effort, so.
Okay.
That's why it would be important to have you all as the same team for both, but.
If you want to confirm with them, I just don't, I wouldn't be able to.
We can do that.
I get it,
Yeah,
we
awesome,
can do
yeah.
it.
Yeah, and even, whatever happens, if there is another applicant where you guys are working very closely,
City of Claremore,
yeah, we would be able to, because all the PDMGs are in the same office.
okay.
We can always coordinate, or it might be me, but I just do not discuss other applicants until I've gotten, I don't even discuss, for those folks who do have consultants, until I have a letter from that applicant saying, you can discuss my recovery with these folks. I don't feel so bad anymore. Yeah, it's,
No, I understand, that's good, we can figure that out.
yeah, and I wouldn't discuss your recovery with anybody else. Keeping everybody's information private is important to me. So, and I'm sure there wouldn't be an issue for me to say yay or nay, but I would need to get that clearance from them first. Okay, alright. So next, we in the field, we gather information, we validate what we can, and then we send it to our Consolidated Resource Center. You're gonna hear the word CRC quite a bit. They generally write the scope of work and the cost. We do have something called the SPA project, the Small Projects Aid, for our emergency work. And we do try to give them as much of the information, so basically all they do is look at it, this looks right, no spelling errors, and they move it forward for the emergency work. Then they go through those CRCQs that include mitigation, EHP, then it comes back to me for one final look, state for one final look, then you guys look at it, you like it, you sign it, gets in line for obligation. Okay? Then the funds get obligated, where FEMA, that's where FEMA moves the federal funds to the state funds for the state to manage. That's where you start giving them documentation, say, hey, we want money, here's our invoices. Alright, and then the closeout, that's quite a ways down the way, but closeout and validation, it does release funds from the state. Those 5 and 6 are pretty much the same, it just closeout is a little further down the line. Okay? Which brings us to maintaining your files. Because closeout is so far down the line, we say maintain, FEMA says maintain your files for 3 years from state closeout. I believe the state had mentioned 7 years?
Yep, 7 years from the grant closeout, not just your closeout.
Okay, we wanna be prepared for the possibility of audits, and if there is ever any documentation that needs to be provided, do not give us originals, give us copies, email us a copy, don't give up your originals to anybody. Alright, let's talk a little bit more about some additional documents. In emails, I did send off the EHP compliance sheet with EHP guidance specific to this 4791 disaster, and our appendix A with from our Papa G, the public assistant policy and guidance. That one, all of the laws that we have for EHP are in that appendix A, but let me pull up our green sheet. Is it okay if I can have our EHP rep, cause he's the one that makes sure that we get to keep the money we give you, well, that you get to keep the money we give you. EHP, could you tell us a little bit more about what y'all do?
Certainly, Mary. We EHP support public assistance and mitigation grants through compliance review. We don't regulate, and we rely on other federal agencies and your state regulatory framework to assure compliance through your coordination, especially with Oklahoma DEQ is going to have a heavy lift here with debris, which I understand is the the main category A projects that are of concern in this area of the state. I just got here just got here last Tuesday, so I'm just getting familiar with the 4791 disaster recovery. The green sheet I uploaded last night onto Grants Manager. It gives you a guidance of the federal laws that we review for. When we look at a project, we look at 13, 14 different federal laws and executive orders, floodplain being one, ESA, any work in water involves Clean Water Act. You coordinate with, the Corps of Engineers on that. In general, your debris should be looked at by DEQ through a form that is readily available, and if it's not uploaded yet, I will upload it tonight onto Grants Manager. You fill out the form, it's an information submittal to DEQ, and they respond with an answer. We will be looking for that. As Mary laid out, we are part of phase 4 in the grant, in the delivery process. There is really no reason to wait to coordinate with your environmental folks. That should be done up front. And any questions or complicated projects that you have questions, filter them through your PDMG, and we'll work with Mary to resolve any issues or get compliance done up front before it goes to the CRC. The CRC step 3 also has an environmental review component, and if the applicant can get coordination through the Corps, through DEQ, done, all the paperwork submitted prior to in phase 3 with work that's already complete, then that will keep the process moving much smoother. You'll get your reimbursements sooner. Any work that's not complete, we can condition for. That would be your permanent work, categories C through G. And you mentioned that you may want to have a mitigation project for a generator. Mitigation is going to look at that and see what hazard it was exposed to, whether it was wind or flooding, and request that you mitigate that. Flooding might be to raise it up above base flood elevation. I will not further the EHP matter any further. I'll just say that the green sheet has all the information, and it also has a list of coordinating contacts that you can work with. You probably have already worked with these people, so do what you usually do with environmental compliance, and your projects will move a lot smoother. Thank you.
Where
Yes,
is
sir.
Where is this green sheet?
It's loaded into Grants Manager,
Oh, okay.
and that's what it looks like up on the screen right now.
It's, I sent it in the emails, we've uploaded it, and when I send out the notes, my final notes here, I'll include them again. I got them in English and
Okay,
Spanish.
I was looking for an email from him, so I
The
apologize.
debris you're talking about, are you talking brush and trees, or are you talking metal, siding, there's so many things out there.
Yeah, a lot of stuff that goes to the curb is gonna go to the landfill anyway. And you're gonna be coordinating with your county landfill to separate different categories of debris that's out on the curb and moving that to either a transfer facility, a state licensed transfer facility, or a state licensed landfill. And that's gonna basically be business as usual, except you'll have a lot more of it.
Sure.
And we understand that. Having those landfills and transfer facility registration numbers submitted to EHP with your project, explaining where the debris went, it went to this facility, the filing number for the state, that's what we're gonna be looking for.
Thank you.
So,
Any debris is cradle to grave, from where you originally picked it up.
Brush or whatever.
Yeah, even if there's just a temporary storage area, we store it for a little while and then haul it or whatever, but it's cradle to grave. So once it reaches the landfill, that would be considered the grave, of course, so we would have to have that,
Okay.
that information for that landfill.
we also have, we also understand that some woody debris may be cut and dropped in place, it may be left for, functional reuse as firewood during the winter. And that's perfectly acceptable to us. Just explain how you process your waste, where you put it. We discourage debris being placed in the wetlands, that may require a permit through USACE. We also discourage, debris being put in floodplains, especially floodways, because in the floodway, if another event happens, you could have a lot of debris
Float off.
downstream, up against the bridge, and you have another problem.
Don't throw it in the river, please.
We won't.
Appreciate that. All right, so I did add a couple notes up in the debris section to capture those instructions. All right, so a couple other things that I did also add to, I'm so sorry, were you done?
Yeah.
I just moved on, along. Were you done? So sorry.
I have a lot of things on my lap, so
Okay,
I will let you take over. Thank you, Mary.
thank you.
And I'll be available for questions afterwards.
All right, so I did also include in the emails the top 10 procurement mistakes, so if you do work with contractors, procurement is one of the ways that a lot of folks get money pulled back because there was a problem with the contract or some sort of work. It's in there. I haven't had the problem recently, but then again, I do also pass this out first thing at my first meeting, so. And that is the end of my presentation, but we do wanna set up a couple things like weekly meetings. When would be a good date and time of day? Just day of the week, time of day to meet with whoever I'm gonna be meeting with. It doesn't have to be this setup every time. When would be a good time? Day and time.
You just, the normal PDMG meetings that we do.
Weekly check-ins, just, I don't know, most folks are choosing 10 AM. Cause I can come out here once a month. It's about a 2-hour drive for me. It's
Why do
fine.
they keep doing that to you all?
Where you
What we
come,
do.
where you coming from?
Oklahoma City.
Oh, it's not bad.
I've complained to the state, I've complained to FEMA, I've complained to everybody, why do you put our people in Oklahoma City? Hotels here, and then they have 4 hours drive time every time they come to a meeting, and it's, anyway, sorry, it's my little gripe, but,
Texas was worse. Texas was worse for me.
oh, I get it, but, how early do you wanna start, or do you wanna kick the next meeting off? Are you talking this week, next week?
Let's start next week.
Okay, how about the 30th?
So,
We'll all
Tuesday.
be out of town on the 30th.
yeah, I'll echo.
Well, really, at that point, it's,
Conference call?
yeah, I mean, we can do a conference call if you wanna be on that, but,
I would send out the
Well-
Zoom invite.
Okay,
But if
good.
it's, if all three attend, it's an open meeting.
Yeah,
It's all
I
open.
would-
You need to, as long as Robin's representing.
Well, given how close we are to a project that's ready to go for those generators, I can call you later on this week, cause it's, depending on what documentation you have, we might be able to send that project forward this week.
We can put that together pretty quick.
Yeah. So
I
my,
think he's already got some, he's got some quotes on the generator to replace it with, so.
okay.
and typically, that's the way we've done the PDG meetings in the past, is it's, you know, not this style format, it's, you guys send a representative from your office, or, you know, one of you absolutely could attend, but to keep from having to do an open meeting every time, I guess. But it depends on what you guys wanna do, if you want it that way, we'll do it that way. We're here for you. So,
We can do Tuesdays 10 a.m. That time frame's still open for me. Right now,
is that
the
okay
only,
with you all? Start that Tuesday at 10 a.m.
Fine with me, it's not up to me though.
I would say let's do it.
Alright, and you can give me a call later on in the week when, since there was the 6 generators that were already repaired. That's the one I'm talking about, that might be able to just fly forward ASAP,
Okay.
get some money moving. So you guys wanna do Tuesdays 10?
Tuesday 10 a.m. Yeah, we won't do it in here. We'll do it in the same building. It'll be down in our office.
Okay. Tuesdays, 10 a.m. Alright, so I do also use abbreviations when I'm putting people's documentation together, so you don't glaze over trying to figure out what document you're reading. Is there an acceptable abbreviation, or do you want me to continue to use Rogers County every time I name something?
Usually ROCO, as far as I'm concerned.
See, that's what I was thinking, but that sounds fun, so I was like, no, that can't be it.
A lot of people use that.
Yeah.
Everybody around here will know what you're talking about.
Okay, Rocco. Oh, sorry, county. Alrighty, so, I do wanna give a chance to the folks that are online for FEMA. We do sometimes have the agency coordination folks, that if there's something that we can't find funding for, they might be able to find a different way. So far, I have not seen that as a problem for folks. So, IRC, are you guys on the line? Going once, and going twice. Alrighty, how about, yeah, that might be them. How's about civil rights? You guys on the line?
You're on guest Wi-Fi, so that makes a difference, because you've got everybody in the courthouse using that. They couldn't get you on the secure website, Wi-Fi.
That's okay. Alright, EHP we've already heard from. Mitigation, let's give Yvonne another chance. Yvonne? I know you're online, I just,
They say on their side, they're unmuted and they can talk, but for some reason it's not.
Run through, it's still turning there, so it's not.
Yeah, they're muted themselves.
yeah, it's coming up as muted for Yvonne, let's see. Let's do check my audio. Oh, let's try the Preston. Hello? Yvonne?
Hello?
There we go, who we got?
Okay, this is Carl Warrington with FEMA Civil Rights. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, our goal is to ensure equal access to FEMA programs, services, and benefits. So if you have any concern about your equity in the program, services, and benefits, get with your PDMG and she would communicate with me. Thank you all.
Okay, we went over equity with, Carl, Yvonne, any luck, getting unmuted? There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. I've been here the whole time.
Yeah. It was a settings
Okay.
issue, it was a settings issue, my apologies.
No problem. The, as far as their damages, I heard of the generators, but did they have any other damages that mitigation can help with?
I'm thinking so. We have a lot of damages to our election board, for one.
Okay. Okay, so as far as mitigation is concerned, we will, assist you, will help you with that. You have contractors, you all have the, appendix J, and give you some of the guidelines there. So with that being said, we are here to help you, okay? And once again, it's gone above the codes and standards that, that's already set for your area. We'll be more than happy.
Awesome. And do we have a debris subject matter expert on the line? They might not have been able to get in. I kept my phone open to see if the request never came on this one, so apologies to anybody that I didn't, let in early enough. And whoever that 256 number was, cause never got in. Alright, and that's pretty much everything that I have. There's a couple things that we discussed that I didn't put on here, but, I did notice that for category B work, donated resources is also something that you're gonna wanna keep track of.
Yes.
Okay. And the rate is $33 an hour for volunteer work right now, for $47.91. Okay, so that's everything I've got. Questions, comments, concerns?
I'm good.
And the next meeting will be virtual. I'll send out the Zoom link. And I will be sending out these notes with another copy of the green sheet. Is there anything else that I owe you guys other than the green sheet?
No, we just appreciate you coming.
Thank you for having me. All of us.
Yes.
If you're gonna go.
I'm fine. You guys are good. Absolutely.
But I can, yeah. You need to be invited. On one list, all our lists, list them, yeah, okay.
Are we done?
Yes, sir. Thank you all for having us.
Thank you. I have a motion to recess or adjourn.